everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield. I'm a professional dancer, professional dance choreographer, and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States, and I couldn't stay away. I was so curious. This is not a Patreon request because the request was for part 1. I really wanted to see part 2. I couldn't help it. So we're taking a look at the hardest K-pop dances from a dancer part 2. I have many thoughts to share about part 1, so if you have not seen that, please check that out. Part 2 is, I'm definitely excited about it. A lot of you guys were saying that part 2 seems to be a little bit better in terms of what is deemed actually difficult, and based on the thumbnail, I know with at least one routine, I can definitely wholeheartedly say, yes, that one's difficult, but be able to explain it. Mostly what has happened is, as I watch these, I'm going to watch each one that they say and why they say it's the hardest. And then we'll go back, talk about it. Do I agree? Do I disagree? It's kind of a mixed basket, honestly, with this particular person who made this list. So as a dancer, I feel like I can kind of take a look at this myself. So let's go ahead and take a look. Thank you so much for the support and feedback on part 1. Thanks to that and those who kindly reminded me of ones I forgot. I can finish off my list for now. Read the disclaimer in the bio if you want to know more details on how I chose these choreographies. Hold on, I need to do that. Let's go back. Down. I tried my hardest to find all the choreographers and give them credit, but I think I'm missing a lot. Why can't they just list their names in the dance practice description? But I still want to give credit to the talented men and women who worked on them. Here we go. So what we're going to be seeing is LOONA, Butterfly, TXT Crown, Speed, IRENE and SEULGI, After School First Love, BoA Only One, ASTRO Hide and Seek, and HYOLYN, was it Dali? If you guys own any of the albums at home, could you look in the back and comment all the choreographers? Spell is on this list, Nappy Tabs. Oh my gosh, I hadn't seen that name on anything in a long time. Okay, so they didn't say... Okay, here we go. It says, besides the specific reasons I stated for each choreography, I chose these as the hardest because they're difficult even if you do them alone. It's easy to be wowed by a choreo just because the dancers are in sync, so I wanted to take that off the table. Also, keep in mind I'm calling these the hardest from a general population's perspective. If you're trained in one area of dance, some of these may be easier for you than others. See, there we go. For example, if you're a pole dancer, then you might not find First Love hard, but for the general person, the choreography will be difficult. Lastly, please remember I'm calling these the hardest not because they are difficult to learn, but because they are difficult to perfect. If you're reading this, I hope you have a lovely day. See, this is why I read the description. And so I understand their scope and what they're coming across as. However, we're still going to take a look at it. Here we go. LOONA, Butterfly. What a strange, beautiful, sudden vibe. All three has to be perfectly in time. It's not intuitive. It fits, don't get me wrong. Okay. Sidebar. They had Bo Part. According to her online bio, this is the only choreo she's ever done. I know Bo Part. So that might be why it has a traditional urban dance vibe to it. Like a combo you might learn in a studio. I mean, yeah, I can understand that. Okay, going back to here. So my thoughts on this. So I think it's why they're the hardest. Okay, so they said that these are the hardest because of how difficult it is to perfect. From the general public's... See, now I'm about... Okay. From a general public's perspective, any of these choreographies you're going to see are going to be hard for the general public. So you can't technically say that. I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm being honest here and I'm trying to be objective. So you can't technically say, from a general public's perspective, that these are going to be deemed hard. There's going to be so many more on this list. You have to refine your criteria more effectively. You have to think, okay, because the other criteria that they did, I had a feeling they had to refine some of their meaning because a lot of people, possibly like myself, were not understanding, hey, your criteria is not matching up to why you're calling it what you're calling it. So here what they're mentioning for the most part is this appears to be more of a, I will say the musicality is a bit trickier on this one. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. Yeah, that's how you count that. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. Yeah. So because I literally have that in one of my pieces at a studio competition routine, they have 1E and a 2E and I have to count it like that. So that's how they would clean that. But I know that they're not talking specifically about that. You have to be very familiar with counts and knowing and being consistent with what counts you do each movement. So I will say for this, what makes it difficult, it's a like you're hitting other layers of the music that normally you wouldn't predictably naturally want to hit. So you would need to have some sense of musicality training, whether it's in oh my gosh, why can't I brain today? I can't remember. Basically, you have a natural implicit understanding of music, implicit or explicit. There we go. Of understanding musicality or understanding music in any way, shape, or form, which all of us are super saturated in music in general. So it makes sense why like we naturally have a layman mentality, which is like the being somewhat objective if you think a song is good or trash, right? So, but going here, yeah, that boom, but notice all of it was in the upper body. For me, I would even say that it would be more difficult if they were doing a sense of polyrhythmic in the lower body, but most of it is isolated to the upper body. They are doing down up, but all of it matches the same sounds. They're all turning, bleeding it out, and back in. I agree, it's not a typical K-pop dance where every movement is done where the music specially emphasizes it. I like that. Da 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 da. Choo. Oh, ow. But anyway, I do like the choreo. It's nice to go kind of half and half. I will say we did see her feature over there take place. Bo Park does have a really nice. I really like her stuff personally. I think. They said it's the only K-pop choreo she's ever done. I have a feeling she may have done more at this point, but I really very much like her style because she teaches in New York. More of a street style influenced choreo, and so it is nice to see her work infiltrated over here. Do I think this is the hardest? No, I don't. I understand why I think they're doing a better job of justifying their perspective though in comparison to the last video. I will also say this too, hard is subjective. This is subjective. Even with the criteria they gave, it is still subjective. Now there's difficulty, but you have to refine it even further. If you're talking about it from a general public standpoint, I've already said my thoughts on that, but you also have to remember what I've already said. If you're watching this one before my part 1, is when it comes to difficulty, is it difficult because of the polyrhythmic, you have to sing and dance at the same time? Or is it difficult because of the technique that is asked of you to do it correctly? I will say they are trying to approach it from a more technique standpoint, not a wow standpoint, which I think is fine. But in order to do things technically correct as well as full, that is hard. It's just hard, right? So all in all, I do like this. Do I think it's the hardest? No, I don't believe so. It has a nice vibe. I do think you have to have some sense of understanding musicality, but if you think about it as a musical artist, that they're naturally trained in that as a trainee. So that would be my thoughts to that. And they also said in the description, right, that that's how you can do it by yourself. If you isolated that choreography to you just doing it, I can understand how it can be a little bit trickier because you don't have other people to bounce off of on timing. So that I can give them. I can agree with that. So the next one is TXT Crown. Cardio endurance, try this choreo. Oh my gosh, when you finish it, it feels like you ran a marathon in minutes. So much jumping and hopping makes me tired. Adding to that, the choreography relies on teamwork. chain reaction is one of the hardest team parts. So they can't go off of feeling what the partners are doing. I will give this though as my note though about that is they did it off of a cool, they did technically go off of each other because they're at a side pro, oh man. Not quite as hard as those magic hands, but still impressive. Interesting. Okay, so bringing it back here, saying this from the beginning, let me just look at the choreography. So they were saying if you want to improve your cardio, endurance, that's with a lot of pieces. It's not just with this one. Most pieces that we're going to be seeing on this is going to be about cardio endurance. It just depends on what is your scope within the technique and what you're trying to execute. Because for me, like they already said, a routine is going to be naturally easier to some and not for others. And if you're speaking on a general public, you just can't. You can't say general public because all of these will be difficult for the general public because they're not dancers. Okay. When you finish, yeah, I can understand that. And I really do like the usage of the lower body there to help with the transitions. Really nice feels the music well. Great energy, traveling for sure. Very quick on the transitions, I think, is another thing that I've already mentioned. Making sure they all need to be in the right place at the right time. Da 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 da. Really fun. Dee 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 dee. I like that ding 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 ding. Yep, the choreography relies on teamwork. I love that. Yep. For example, okay, this is the part we need to talk about. They're doing waving, so I can really understand what this is. So they're doing, so I call this like a jerking jazz hand. They're trying to do a vibration that is not a vibration. They were doing, to create that visual, they were shaking their hands very quickly to get to the position that they needed to be in. So that's what that was there. I really like the framing. The levels are great. Now, let me actually hear this with the music before I say what I'm about to say. So they're talking about how these guys, they called it a chain. So that is a waving chain, you know, where one of them finishes a wave and the other one begins. So they said they can't go off of feeling, so I'm assuming it's to know when to start. That chain reaction with the hands there is one of the hardest team parts. That I can agree with. Unlike other parts in this one, they don't touch. So that I understand. So they can't go off of feeling of what their partners are doing. So it's really it's a level of, they have to memorize when their wave takes place on the track, even if there's not a sound to justify it. We dancers have to do that a lot, especially whenever you're going off of timing. Even when you're not 100% in the know of what your timing is, you still have to make sure you're on the same page with those around you. And, you know, there's a good chance because of where they are, probably there's a good chance they could very easily look to see, or if they're here, they can look at what's going on, and the goal is for them to have enough confidence to be able to not look. So that would be in the rehearsal space. They probably just had to drill it until they had it. So is that remotely difficult? I would say it's more, it just takes longer. I wouldn't say it's difficult because it's a basic wave with timing and it's just getting used to working off of somebody else. But I can agree because it's not off of feeling, it just takes longer. I don't think, I guess I could say it is a little bit more difficult. That right there, yeah, going off of feeling. Nice little tone wop twist there, which was fun. That right there with the bleed through. That is easier, but also there's sounds in their music that you can hear where those drops are supposed to take place. With the hits there, they're grabbing. Love the lift, that was nice, super seamless. And I love that they have little safety nets right there for him too. He drops in. Magic, hold on. Did they call this magic hands? I don't know. Anyway, but my overall note of this is, do I think this is the hardest choreo? No, I don't. Not for those reasons. It's just a timing thing. But also they said, how is it? Now I gotta go back. Hold on. In the description they said, I chose them. They're difficult even if you do them alone. They are, honestly, they would be harder if you did them alone. That based on how they're justifying it, they would be hard because a lot of it is influenced off of what people are doing around you peripherally. But doing it with a group, I mean, it's going to be, it'll feel more full, it'll make more sense. I would say it's more complex in the nature of, let's say, the formation dynamics, but the techniques themselves right now that I'm seeing, they're not remotely difficult. And there are other reasons that they're focusing on. I would say, is that the hardest? Honestly, I think there was a routine from 17 that's not on this list. It wasn't on the first one that I had just recently reacted to, where that one was pretty brutally difficult to do. Because of the speed changes and the pocket shifts of your textures. That's what would be deemed in your musicality. Those are the three heavy hitter things for me that dictate complexity and competency within the craft you're trying to do. Anyway, speed. Okay. That's right, they got the Heelys! So you couldn't tell it was made to be done in Heelys. I mean, I will say anything that requires like skates or Heelys for the acrobatics but didn't include one of those dances because it's the Be More Gymnastics family, the B-Boys may disagree. Hold on. I just processed what they just said. Okay, do I agree this one's difficult? Yes, this one is difficult because of the factor of anything that deals with props or things that are outside of just content. It's hard. This is hard because of the formation shifts and transitions you have to do. I forgot how wild these entertainment agencies were because they were not the only ones who pulled stuff like this. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because After School did like the pole dancing one, right? So I think like they pulled some wild mess in these early eras for sure. This is one of them. Now I guess my question would be, when you take the Heelys out, is this the hardest one? No, it's not. It's remotely easy. What makes it hard is the Heelys, right? So I guess now my question is the Heelys are not a dancing tool, but they did use it, and that's what makes it difficult, right? Now, if we're going off of the overall aesthetic of what it is, yes, it's difficult. If you're going off of just the technique, or just the dance itself, it is not difficult. So, but I will give them that. Heelys, part of me wants to get some Heelys again. So go on eBay or something. Who knew that Crocs would last longer than Heelys? You know? Gen Zs are strong, I tell ya. Which is the only choreo, because I enjoy my life. This one would be easier by yourself because you wouldn't run into anybody. Part of me is curious if people actually have covered this one. This is before the era of people like really covering stuff. Oh, that's the sentence that they said. Hold on. What was it? Speed is famous for their acrobatics, but I didn't include one of those dances because I consider that to be in the more gymnastics family. The B-Boys may disagree. Then I would also like to state, if you're going to say exclude routines because of a criteria like overuse of acrobatics, don't include routines like this that have overuse of props to help create the difficulty. Does that make sense? So if you're looking at acrobatics on a gymnastic standpoint, I look at Heelys as an overly theatrical prop standpoint. It's not the dance. Do you know what I mean? So if you eliminate the acrobatics and you look at the dance, is the dance difficult? That's one thing. Regardless if it's breaking or not, and knowing the difference between those. And then looking here, if you take the Heelys away, is it difficult? So I would say even with a justification of not including, it's kind of shooting this routine in the foot why you would include it on your list. If that makes sense. So that transition is freaking sick though. I think honestly this is probably one of the coolest. It's one of the coolest routines to do. It does remind me of when people do rollerblading. right? Or roller skating, and they dance on roller skates. I love that. It has a nice communal aspect about it, and I really like that. So those are my overall notes on that. Is this the hardest dance? With Heelys, yeah, but if you just dance itself, no. Now, this routine right here, IRENE and SEULGI. Naughty. I need to cover this routine on my channel because I've actually learned part of this because I want to learn routines whenever the dance itself is difficult. This is a really difficult routine to do correctly. So I completely missed what they were saying here. Yes, I love to see tutting in K-pop. Yes, I know Spella was the one who did this. Tutting is all about angles. Takes lots of practice and training to consistently get clean angles. That I agree with. I still don't think they are clean on their tuts. I agree with that. She really hasn't. That's not, it's interesting. But also you have to think, this is a stylistic choice, but honestly it's a really good way to cover up your lack of wrist flexibility. Na 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 blah, na 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 na. People who don't tut a lot, memorization can be real hard. For them, moves may seem all similar. Another part, they all mesh together in your head. Okay, we gotta actually touch on this one. Tutting, I've trained in tutting. This is a difficult, out of all the routines that we've seen, I would keep this one on the list. 100%. I still feel that way after I've learned it, after I've seen, in 2023, this is still a really difficult dance. I would put this in top 20 most difficult dances, probably top 10, because IRENE and SEULGI also do not do this 100% correctly either. Even though they trained on it for 3 months, I know that. They still don't hit it, and that's okay. That's okay. You know, they're not Spella, right? I love the fact that that just freaking went for it. It's highly polyrhythmic because they are hitting the tone, like they're hitting the lyrics on this. Yeah, but when you notice though, I think my biggest note in this is, because like even here, it's just my overall note is they have these stylistic hands. Yes, I know Stella uses them a lot, but you have to note she justifies a full angle. They don't. And so for me, it feels like this hand was used for them to help cover up their lack of wrist flexibility. And that's my note, especially not quite this one, this one. This one is really, really hard to do if you do not have flexibility in your wrist, and it takes time. It's not an overnight process. It takes time to get the flexibility and strength to be able to do it. So that's my overall note when I learned it. That was the hard part about learning it, was I didn't know what was the technically correct way to do it, and part of me wishes Spella came out with a tutorial on it. There's a good chance she did. So they're touching on this one angle right here, but I would implore you, there's other issues going on. Look at the breakage of the angle here. It looks, yeah, just the breakage, over flexation of the fingers at the top half here. This breaks the line, bringing it up. So I would say there's a hyperextension taking place that's creating an extra angle, and that's what you want to avoid if it's not intentional. So I think it was really strategic on her part, but just notice the flexibility is not there. Even when she overcurves her fingers, she's still not fully flexed down. She's about like right there. So that's why they made that choice. I'm just going to go ahead and call that right now. And then right here too, her angle is still off here. And I think that's my interesting thing. I'm actually impressed that she's able to hit the angle this way, but look, she's chilling. The reason why that is because she's angling. A lot of times with these side angles, you have to technically cheat it, because going on a true side is very difficult. So a lot of people cheat it, but they modify the angle to still maintain that 90 degrees. So that's a fun fact about tutting, and that can really help you be able to do it, even if you're not super flexible. But here's the thing, the fact that I found so many technical discrepancies on this, and they trained for this for 3 months, that can show you when it comes to the actual technique, even if you're good at tutting, there's still a polyrhythmic element. I will say this, Those who are very good at tutting a lot of times don't engage in choreography as much, because tutting is an exploratory style where they figure out structures or sequences and they try to build on them. Here, this is choreography, so it would be difficult even for tutters to do this choreo because of the choreography retention or the understanding of the choreography toolkit to utilize it on a set base of the music. A lot of times the explore is very similar to waving and a lot of other styles. So that's my one note too. I would say all around, even those who have experience, it takes time. You're not just gonna this isn't natural. Even for tutters, this isn't natural. Oh, did I break my computer? I'm not saying this to critic SEULGI. Is that SEULGI? It's a teensy weensy mistake. Mistakes happen. I understand, because remember, I try to be objective on these. I understand that we don't want to point out mistakes for people, but I think it's important because it showcases that they are human. Does that make sense? I'm not going to sit here and glorify these people as they're perfect when there's obvious mistakes taking place, but also I understand my scope. I'm a professional dancer. I'm a professional teacher. I teach stuff like this. So it would be disrespectful in my job role and my responsibility as what I do to just completely overlook it. It would be the same thing as if I was looking at, because I look at my students and I do the same thing with my students as I look at it and I'm like, okay, do this, here's what's happening, here's how we can fix it. That's my big thing too, is that a lot of these types of videos, and I'm not projecting this onto whoever made this, when people make videos like this, they don't want to be stepping on toes, but they're subconsciously stepping on toes of other people by doing what they're doing, if that makes sense. And so for me, I feel like providing, I'm an individual where if we point out mistakes, we want to find solutions with those mistakes, which is why I analyze the way that I do. I don't even call it criticisms, because I explain why that's happening so I can provide actual practical, if you want to get better at it, here's what you can do. This is not an impossible routine. They have backup dancers to be able to do it. Very quick turnaround time. And I think it was a really smart thing on the choreographer's end to add those tasteful hands because it really helps. I was honestly very impressed at the density of how much tutting was actually in it. And not like, it wasn't simple tutting. It was it was multiple techniques represented. I think that's what I really liked about this one. So out of all the ones that I've seen so far, this one would stay on the list. Okay, after school. That right, ladies, pole dancing and cape. Same era, guys. It's different than speed. The girls had to master completely different genre of dance just for one song. Even the pole dancing has negative connotations. No, he's not. There's no need to zoom in on her crotch. I do. I mean, I would say it goes, yeah, I can agree. It goes back to, they use similar justification for naughty as they did here. But I would also implore you, they did say in the description that with pole dancing, if you've done pole dancing, you would deem this more easier than other things, which I can agree with 100%. Have I done pole dancing? No, I've done aerial silks though. And it does require a lot. It does require a lot of strength positioning, where you put your weight distribution, and getting callous. Honestly, the partner ones are probably, they're able to help each other in those. It really bothers me. I really hate it when camera guys try to make, not camera guys, just camera people in general, just not necessary. Not necessary, but you know, that was the era that this was in, and that's what the entertainment agency wanted them to do. This is freaking cool though. I'm very impressed with them and how they did it. Drop it down, very nice position. It takes a while to get used to it. I think it's interesting the type of tattoos they have on them. That's cool. Yeah, so, but I will say this is not the same thing as Naughty in terms of difficulty. So, just like with, I said with Naughty, it is still difficult even for tutters. Because you have to think about the toolkit that needs to be utilized for that. With pole dancing, a lot of times it is choreographed, a lot of times. So it is based on they may be doing more basic intermediate things. The Naughty's tutting had a lot of polyrhythmic elements to it. So even for tutters, it would take them a second. Difficulty doesn't negate based on your competency within it. That's not my point. And I know I've said that for a couple of justifications for myself, but my point is this: because I'm able to pick up on something doesn't mean that it's therefore not difficult anymore. Somebody who is a world champion breaker doesn't mean that, you know, things that are deemed difficult for others or certain skills are not difficult. Like, they're difficult, which is what makes, and being able to empathize with it as somebody who is a world level or an elite level performer, you're able to empathize with that. And as a teacher, you have to understand the beginner, intermediate, and advanced progressions of skills and know that they're beginner, intermediate, advanced. So I know that with certain techniques, a head isolation is going to be more advanced for someone than for me, because that was one of the first skills I learned. That concept is so left field in comparison to things that are normal, like a head iso going up and down, looking side to side. That is easier because that is a part of our day-to-day natural usage of the head. So for me with pole dancing, you don't normally use it, just like with the Heelys. You don't normally use it, right? So I would say this one took a long time to get to that place, but when you look at the density of what they're doing in pole dancing, I can tell some of the partner work, some of how their holds, it took them time to get it, but even with the tutting with SEULGI, they still didn't get it 100%. Here, they look freaking amazing doing it. So I would say that I could keep this one on. It is hard. They got no business having pole dancing in K-pop in the sense of for the projection of the over-sexuality of them. I would say the pole dancing for the art form, but the camera guy really did not do a good job there, and it really makes me upset of the fact that they were projecting them in this way. But I appreciate the art form. I really do. And then for me, it would just go back to my previous point. You're going to have pole dancing in here, you're going to have Heelys, but you're not going to have overly gymnastic routines in here. So I think that's, for me, we're not on an equal playing field on what's being considered in the criteria. I think it's what I go back to, because if we are looking at difficulty, the Heelys would be difficult because of the element of the Heelys. This is difficult because of the utilization of the pole. The tutting, when you actually think about it, that's your dance content. The dance content itself is difficult. And I think that's my main point. BoA, only one. This dance isn't particularly difficult, but it separates the okay dancers from the great dancers. Let's rewatch the first chorus. She's insanely good. Hands down the best female dancer in K-pop. Honestly, I can't think of anyone who even comes close. Not that they're good. Clearly, many are. BoA is just that talented. Wait, okay, so they were telling us to go back and rewatch the first chorus, and what were they referencing? They said a dance is a part, but it separates the okay from the great. Okay, great. Tell me what about the first chorus that separates from the good and the great dancers? going here, it's a really nice peel out as they scoop out to the side, which is really fun. That tick, dipping down to 7, 8. When you think about the actual timing, the timing is more on the basic side. Yes, we agree. I think they also agree with that. 5, 6, 7, and 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my note here is that they hit that ding ding. It's a choreography pocket, is what this is. Yeah, so my one note with this is that a lot of them are operating with the isolation of the torso here. That's what happens a lot of times when you do this type of style. You're supposed to be very clean, very militant in it. It just reminds me of J. Chris Moore, is this style specifically. Yeah, let's go. So there's really not a ton of torso utilization here from really anybody, but the choreography doesn't call for it. It maintains the cleanliness. There's one of those statements, in my opinion, hands down, the best female dancer in K-pop. And this was what, in like 2020 when they made this? I understand the influence Boa had and the importance of her in the generation that she came from as an artist. Is she the best female dancer in K-pop? That's such a debatable topic because there's so many factors that go into that. It really is, you know? So I'm not even gonna touch on that because that's a very subjective opinion in something that you're supposed to, when it comes to making a criteria list or basing stuff off of a criteria, you have to try to eliminate as much subjectiveness as possible. But when you use subjective comments to justify your objective opinions, it's not going to help in your case. Like in the case of I can't agree with them because what they brought to the table was too subjective, and I don't agree with their level of subjectivity because I'm trying to be objective, and even now it is hard to stay objective because I'm a human, you know, like it was just with the yeah, it's just, it is, you know, it was nice, but it's not, no, it wasn't difficult. I would say, did they feature it because they said the hardest K-pop dances is making it, would separate the good from the great. Okay, there's a lot of great dancers, and there's a lot of great dancers who do great dances. So that's not, this one doesn't technically, that one doesn't really showcase as much of the versatility of being a great dancer as other ones do because the pocket is the same. So there's no polyrhythmic challenge in it. There's no posture shifts or transition or dynamics that create challenges that separate the good from the great. Or it's not, the movement quality is not enough to where it separates the good from the great. Like what separates good from great has to do with the combination of artistry with competency. That's what separates good from great, is actually having an individual personality outside of just mimicking movement. That's the difference. Not, can you do choreography well? That's just a job requirement, you know? So I think that it's just, their justification is not justifying for me on that one. Astro hide and seek. Most of Astro's choreos are no walk in the park. Okay. He has a pizza shirt. They fuse more traditional forms of dance, like jazz, with the urban style. I did a little triple coupe. Why is it on the list? Because the song concept is so positive. You can't show any fatigue in your expression. Look at him. I get that. So, okay, so they're saying it's the deceptive of you can't showcase any fatigue. But I would also challenge that most artists can't show fatigue no matter what. Just because you smile doesn't mean that, I mean, yeah, you can't show fatigue when you're smiling. You also can't show fatigue when you're trying to do the boy crush. You can't show fatigue whenever you're looking like an F-boy. You can't showcase fatigue whenever you're trying to come across in whatever concept you're trying to do because you don't want to look like you're out of shape. You don't want to look like that you can't handle your own track. Because it looks like you didn't work hard enough. It's a mix of all of that, right? So I would say that's not Once again, not a justifiable reason that showcases this one above and beyond all the other routines that could be from ASTRO. Yeah. And I know one of the members of this group passed away this year. So I know that the dynamic of this group is changed dramatically because of his passing. So rest in peace. So that is the downside of watching some of these, is that there's a lot that's happened, like with Speed, there's like After School's dissolved, Speed's dissolved, BoA, she got in some hot water with SWF, with, was it SWF and SMF, like some of her choices and judging, there's a lot of little things like that. Forms, okay, so they said, what was it they say? Love the way their choreographers fused a more traditional form of dance, like jazz. So I would refine my phrasing, and I know they said that, you know, forgive my misspellings and such, to say traditional, because it's feels like you're downplaying hip hop a little bit. You know, I feel like just because hip hop didn't come from a studio doesn't mean that it has its own fundamentals, its scope. Like with urban, so if you didn't know this, it's no longer called urban, it's called open, because they haven't quite coined a new name for it, because, you know, with 2020, a lot of things were brought to light, and that term is not the best way to interpret what this is. Here's what it is. It is a choreographer's slang perspective of whatever disciplines they themselves studied growing up. So to where that is their nuances, their fingerprints, their movement quality, what the textures and all of those things, that's what comes into play whenever they choreograph routines. It is a choreography style, right? And I've already said my case. I don't believe choreography should be a style, it's a toolkit. Just like freestyle is not, it's not technically a style of dance. It is a toolkit within a style. Just like choreography. Choreography is the application of technique that you learn within a fundamental style. Like jazz, ballet, tap, popping, tutting, waving, crump, whacking, vogue, breaking, crump. I already said crump. Light feet. The list goes on and on. Regardless if it's a street style or if it's a studio style. So I would say the better verbiage here would be, instead of saying a traditional style, it's like, I love the fact that they incorporate studio styles like jazz, because that's, you know, it's definitely, or like ballet. That would be a great way to put it too. Because when you think about it here, I'm trying to think what specifically, I guess it's just the turn that they said that was incorporated. Because I don't notice any other things that are considered jazz fundamentals in this to equate, like, what makes it. Yeah, none of this screams, turns. He does a triple, that looks more figure skating, you know, or technique within figure skating. That the way he held it is more of how you would do it in figure skating, not in jazz. But also it just it's a perspective or a preferential thing in that. This is preference. That was a There wasn't a ton of jazz technique or other studio styles in play there outside of just basic movement, honestly. So I do understand what they were trying to say, but the only thing was just that one moment of doing a triple turn. It did look like they're trying to do a coupe, but at the end of the day, was there fundamental issues with the turn? Probably. But my point is this. It's based on the criteria that they were trying to go off of, to be like, this is what it's, you know, this is what makes it difficult. They said their routines are no walk in the park. A part of me is curious. I have not really watched a bunch of ASTRO stuff, really at all. So this is really my only taste of it. So I can't state if this was their hardest piece that they're showcasing or not. I can't agree. It is hard to, feel to look and appear happy whenever you're performing, but honestly part of it is being able to have a stoic or just utilizing your face at all is really difficult whenever your body is so fatigued, because the first things that are going to go when you're tired are your face and your torso, or the things or techniques that or the way that you're supposed to do your techniques that your body's not used to doing. It's not an implicit thing that your body is doing. So that is just an overall note about this. I do like the choreography. Is it the hardest choreography I've seen? No. So that's why I don't know if I would keep this one on the list. I love this though. That was fun. They were like, oh, they were tired. It is tiring. I can just say that it's tiring. Okay, first of all. Okay, so going back to this one, okay, so there is a choreo that she has. It was by Nicole Kirkland, actually, that I don't know when that one came out. It could be around this time. I think that one was more difficult than what we're seeing here. So if we were going to choose out of those, if that was in the time frame in which this was made, I would have picked the other one. But that's not, I mean, if I react to it, then we'll react to it one day. But saying here, yeah, getting up on all down the floor, but notice you don't have to, they say if you can't touch the floor with your hands, so that's a question of like, okay, can I not touch the floor with my feet separated to my, like if I hold my elbow out, if my legs are separated about elbow length apart, if I can't do that, like if you're able to touch, honestly, if you're able to touch the floor between your elbow length and when your feet are touching, you can do this choreo. Because look, even here, she didn't do a full split. She did a jazz split. She just modified it. So I would say it requires a level of discipline. Dancing in heels is a very different technique style. I will agree with that. You do need to, you also have to think about the type of shoe that you wear. You want to avoid having a platform. You want it to, at least the sole of the front half of your heel, to be a little bit closer to the floor than it not having any platform. That makes it really difficult, much more difficult. And then with your heel too, a chunky heel, like what you're seeing, what she's wearing. Actually, she's wearing a pretty good one. Chunky heels are great. Most people do like a 3.5, 4 into a 6. But notice what she's wearing. I mean, peep toes are really nice because you want to have airflow because your feet can get sweaty, right? But you don't have to. I would say that can be really helpful. Heels are nice because where you cater your weight, you have to cater it differently. You can't just rock your weight back into your heels, pun intended and not intended. You have to balance it a little bit differently. So notice hers is more of a mesh, so you can tell she has a lot more experience. She does have a slight I believe that's the choreographer. I believe she has a slight increase in her heel, but she does not, at least on the platform part. I would say choreographically, this would be put in the same department. Actually, I wouldn't put this in the same department as Heelys or pole, because of the shoe type. A lot of the dancers use the shoe type, but this is a style. You know, so heels it's a style of choreography. Dripping it down. So like knowing where your weight goes, that's the hardest part about heels, and it does take time to kind of figure that out. Talked about that. They talk about flexibility. I don't think you have to have as much flexibility as they're claiming you have to. I'm not very flexible in comparison to my cohorts in this field. That is honestly one reason I subconsciously navigated and gleaned more towards hip hop and the street styles, because it's a style that I could do without being flexible, because I was never really flexible growing up. I got the receipts. You know, so you can do this without the flexibility. I think the issue is more weight placement. That's going to be the harder thing to navigate with this one choreographically. The statement, you just can't do the choreo, I don't agree with that. It takes time to do it. Do I think this is hard? I think she has a harder choreo, but I do think this is difficult. More on the heels. It goes back to, if you've done heels before, you have to remember there is a scope between beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Think about the tempo of it, how many times they are coming up and going down onto the floor. I can agree with them there that just the amount of times that she goes up and down. But how I think she did a good job as choreographer. How she chose to get her down is a more simpler way to get down, or an easier way to have support in getting down. So obviously it's the intermediate to advanced. Probably advanced because of the musicality and tempo of it. I would give them that for sure. Coming up. You can just separate your legs further there just to be able to get up because of how you come in and out of it. But if you notice, even she didn't step in all the way, the choreographer did. So it kind of looks like she's still navigating how to do the choreo. That's another indicator too. Confidence, yes, but I think that's with all pieces. That's not just the only thing here. The biggest struggle for beginner dancers is having confidence. With this, I mean, with all the routines, you have to have the confidence to be able to smile while you're dying from Astro's piece. You have to have the confidence to not look where you're going in your heelys. You have to have the confidence to, whenever you're presenting a particular facade in pole dancing, it's an art form, but also what they were trying to come across as. All of those routines, all the routines on this list have to exude confidence. It's just different confidence. So that's not just exclusive to this routine. I would say I'm glad that we've included a heel routine. I think that's cool. How she's finishing it up though as she drops down. This is her dance break moment. I will say, as somebody who has a lot of experience dancing, here's a really great way to look at this. You do not have to have a ton of experience dancing in other facets. I feel like everybody has to recalibrate to this style, like ballroom. If a ballroom dancer is coming into heels, they'll do a better job converting it because they're used to dancing in a heel. Somebody coming from a street style background, it's going to be harder for me to convert it because I'm not used to dancing in that kind of footwear. People who come from point, they're dancing on a completely different type of weight distribution on their shoe. They're also, yes, they can walk on a heel easier than other people who don't. But my point still stands is that with all of these styles that they're saying you need to have lots of experience dancing, you have to have a lot of experience if you're going to properly do this choreo. You need to have lots of I don't agree with the dancing part. It's you need to have experience in heels. That's what I would say. And I would say the amount of experience is not quite the concern. It's the quality and how much and how productive you are in that span of what you learn. If I studied heels every day, I'd be able to do this no problem. You know what I'm saying? But because I only learned heels to do choreo, heels choreo, that's my exposure. I had a harder time. So understanding the fundamentals of how to put your weight shifts, this heel style is naturally going to be a little harder if you're not used to being in that footwear, for one. And secondly, you're not used to thinking, it's a different type of posture of your weight distribution. So even if you have a ton of experience dancing, you will still struggle with it like a newborn calf. Honestly, you can, because if you've never worn heels a day in your life, but you're a world-class breaker, you're going to struggle doing heels. That's just what it is, right? Same with gymnasts. And so, but that can be said from those who only exclusively do heels trying to do other styles. That's the thing. And I feel like there's a disconnect that happens sometimes, because when people make statements like what we're seeing, you need to have a lot of experience dancing. That's a very broad and not helping anybody type statement. What I just told you is, yes, this is I would say, yeah, I would keep this one on the list. It is difficult. Is it the most difficult in her catalog? I feel like there's other heels dances that we could include from the K-pop realm. And I know she's someone who pursues it more than anybody else. That I would include, like her other one, because there's certain elements in it that are, or the transitions and context between some of the movements are what makes it difficult, because of your weight distribution and your fluency in the posture and the weight shifts. That would be the overall difficulty point of this, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I feel like that was the last one, right? Or if you're just naturally very confident. Yeah, being a good performer is harder to cultivate in some, more so than technique. Teachers know how to teach technique. Like for me, I know how to teach technique. Teaching performance is harder for me, but other teachers know how to teach performance, or they know ways to present analogies to get someone to perform more. Like it is different because it teeters on to the good versus great. Somebody who is great at technical execution but sucks at performing. A lot of people tend to cater more towards people who perform well but don't have the best refined technique, is what we end up seeing more so in the industry. Or in, like, for auditions, a lot of times people care. They want the full package. They want somebody who's good technically and has good presentation, but the presentation matters more because the general public is naturally going to cater more towards performance over technique every time. Every time. So, unless they are an adjudicator who is looking for technique, or they know what they're looking for. That's pretty much my goal. But yeah, I would feel like I agree with more of this video than I did with their first part, but I do still have some natural qualms with it. Like I was expecting it, let's be honest. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this is not my normal type of video, but I really felt incomplete by not reacting to part 2, especially because some of you have already been commenting about you know, they did a better job with part 2. I do agree with you. I really feel like this one was a little bit more comprehensive, a little bit more justifiable, but I still said what I said. There's still certain things that I would have adjusted, or ones I wouldn't include based on the reasons that were given. But at the end of the day, I'm very appreciative that we're able to have just the beauty of dance discussed and people care about it, and I think that's great. And shout out to Full-Time K Fangirl for making the videos to where we get to have these types of discussions, and for me, I get to put my perspective on it, so it is much appreciated. And do I agree with them 100%? No, I don't agree with most people 100%, because and sometimes I don't even agree with myself 100%, and that's okay, because we're all growing humans. And remember, this was filmed not recently, it was in 2020 when this was filmed. So naturally, there's going to be some major discrepancies here. I've already said this in the first video. I was very different in 2020 compared to now, so maybe they are viewing things the same, or maybe they are, you know, I can tell they were learning in part 2 to be a little bit better about how they were articulating what they were coming across. So we already see growth, right? And so, and it made me enjoy it a little bit more that way too. But if you want to see more dance content, K-pop analysis, things of the like, I have it all over YouTube as well as on Patreon. Everything is released early on Patreon, like this video. And if you want to check it out, you can. If you just want to see what pops up on YouTube every day, that is absolutely fine as well. I'm Jess, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.